betul. Jelas sekali. Betul. Betul.
That will take That'll take about a couple of months, and at the end of those 2 months, in sometime in the middle of April, is when we are imagining we will be moving from the drawing board into the field, and start thinking about which of these ideas can be executed. So that's the broad plan. Um, Swastik, do you want to add anything at this point?
No, all good at the moment.
Okay. So, if any of you have at this point of time any quick questions, just put them in the chat board in the Zoom. Please feel free to ask questions, raise concerns. If you have any technical issues, please let us know. We will be making the recorded version of this entire thing available to everyone after this is over. The structure of this is going to be that in the next half an hour or so, I and Padma will be talking about the 4 thematics that we have identified as themes to think through when we are thinking about places. And then we will open it up for a discussion about what are the actual competition process that Swastik and Divya will explain to you what's going to happen over the next 2 3 months. And then we will have questions from each of you. So once we have that sorted out, what we are going to do is to move you all into 4 groups, into breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, we are going to be working on one simple task, which is to figure out how to put together a good a good dream team for achieving what you want to achieve. Think of this as an exercise that you're going to be doing, not necessarily getting locked into any particular group. So it may so happen that you will be finding yourself in a group that where you actual team members are not even present, but that's fine because this is supposed to be a workshop in which we learn from each other. One of the things that we are also concerned about is that we have a large number of people who may never actually meet with each other face to face. So we need to find ways of making sure that people get to know each other online, offline, and so on. And we're figuring out the technology for that. We'll also help you. We've been receiving a lot of questions about, I'm an individual, how do I find my team? We will help you find your teams, and we will think through all of those things. So if we are all good on all of this plan, I will move on to the next part of this workshop. Or if you have any questions right now, you just let me know. No questions at this point of time immediately. I mean, I can see some questions in the chat box, but those are questions that can be actually answered in when we're thinking through the process. All right. So one quick thing that I wanted to share with all of you um, is a little bit of history of how this competition actually came together and how we began to think about it. So, yeah. So I'm going to share with you. Um, an Instagram post, which let me just see where is this. Can you see this screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is I mean, you'll be able to explore this much more on our Instagram account. But this is a story that began during the lockdown when several of us were trying to figure out what to do with our time, and we had some funding from Wipro Foundation to try and work towards a set of ideas that can be executed, which had to do with water in the city. Now, it's a very vaguely defined idea. It was not very, there's not too many constraints. Do something interesting around water. So we ran this competition, and one of the teams that came up with an idea that seemed the most promising at that point of time essentially said that, look, we have a slum in Secunderabad, which is on a hill slope, and there is water pipelines which are coming up from the top of the hill through the slope to a number of houses in that area. And every day there is a lot of water leakage. Every day there is a lot of slippery slopes. So people are falling down, people are getting injured, and we need to do something about this. So what they proposed was that they will build a staircase from the top of the hill, about 50 steps or so. They will create a channel in the middle of the staircase so that the pipes can be neatly organized through that. The channel could also be turned into a ramp on which people can take bicycles and motorcycles up and down. It meant also that once you have the staircase and the channel, then you could also connect the roofs of all of these houses through a rainwater harvesting system into that, so the water could come down. So a number of ideas began to slowly revolve around this idea of a staircase. But once the actual execution began, we realized that there were, apart from the actual physical infrastructural related problems, a number of social issues that were also getting addressed. So one of the issues was that if my house is not very easy to reach, then my friends will not come to visit me. If my house is in a bad location, then my social life is going to be badly affected. My communication with other people is going to be affected. So there was one young person who said that he was not able to find a way to get married because nobody wanted to consider him as an eligible bridegroom because of the location of his house. There was an old man who said that, look, I haven't been able to go and meet my friend who just lives down the street, but I can't go to him because you can see him actually in the picture there. Right. So all of these kinds of things began to be sorted out. And in doing this, other people jumped in. They said that let's put together some plants here. Let's put together some way of creating blackboards, whiteboards. And eventually, in something like 2.5 lakhs expenditure in 4 or 5 months' time, we now have an extremely vibrant social space that got created in this area. Now, this is not quite the textbook case of how places are created. This is not quite how you do architecture, but this is how exactly people do things on the ground. Yeah. So what we realized as we started working through all of this over a period of time was that people actually build things in a slow, casual manner, experiment, talk to each other, find out that things can work. So one of the things that happened when they were building this was that they had a very tight budget and they had built the staircase and suddenly we had a big rain and half the staircase got washed out. So they had to then figure out a way of rebuilding the whole thing without having a lot of extra money. So as we work through all of this, one thing that kept coming back to us was that it will be fantastic if we can actually do many more sites like this, because it involved people, it involved infrastructure, it involved a lot of learning for students, for older people as well. It involved people of many different generations. And it almost became a tourist spot at some point of time because people were found the whole idea very, very exciting and interesting as a possibility. So then the next iteration, we wanted to support 5 such projects and we ran another competition. Now, 2 of those projects are actually being implemented right now. One involves a place where garbage is a huge problem. And the other, which involves a site that is completely abandoned and right next to a big water body. But as we're thinking through these things, one of the interesting things that happened was the government of Telangana approached us and said that, why don't we sign a memorandum of understanding and we can support hundreds of sites like this across the city, right? Now, this suddenly meant that you have an intense scaling up of the operation. And we didn't know what exactly that would mean, how it will pan out, whether the government has the capacity to take on several small projects, etc. And as we discovered along the way, the government's capacity to execute small projects is not very high. Governments know how to do big things. They don't know how to do small things. So this is kind of the kind of stuff that we need to work out. And part of what we thought as we worked through all of this was that it'll be interesting to see if we can run a competition and encourage a lot of people to jump in and develop ideas and bring them to a point where you will have fully developed executable ideas and then find people who can execute them. So that's the way in which we began to think about it. And Swastik will tell you a little bit more about it later. But that's where the idea of this competition came together. So as we began to pull this together, Divya and other people in the team came in. They did an extensive, detailed documentation of every site that was selected. These are all sites that was proposed by the government itself. So in principle, the government is willing to support this. And when all of these things were put together, one thing that we had in mind is that it will be great to make it possible for teams which are distributed across many different places to be able to jump in, right? It shouldn't be necessary for everybody to be in the local site. But it also is important to make sure that people don't think about these places in a complete abstraction, right? So you want something specific, concrete. We want you to engage with the site, but we want you to be also able to engage with this from a distance. So that's the idea of doing all of this material, making all of this material available to you at some point of time, and then facilitating further support and mentorship and informational support that we can provide. So that's the broad background. Now, the themes that we have selected for this are themes that actually have to do with stuff that any good city should have, right? So the 4 themes that we decided to work with are a city that has places which make you feel safe, right? What makes you feel safe in a particular place? What makes you feel unsafe in a place? So as we have selected these 10 sites, as you select each of these sites, we want you to think about these places from the point of view of safety, right? And then obviously there will be questions about what does it mean to think about safety, whose safety, in what way, etc., etc. The second theme that we want you all to think about is child friendliness, right? There are places in the city which seem to be completely hostile to children. It's a public place, but you would never want a child to be left alone in that place. It's going to be dangerous. It could be injurious, all kinds of things. So we want you to think in terms of how to make places places safe. The third thing is that all of our cities are constantly struggling with ecological processes. It could be about garbage, it could be about drainage, it could be about lakes, it could be about rocks, it could be about flora, fauna, all kinds of things. We want you to think about how you can bring about some positive change ecologically in a given site, right? That should be one of the considerations. And then the fourth consideration is one of the things that we've been concerned about for the last 3 years in our work is the issue of heat. Increasingly, our cities are becoming hotter and hotter, and our ability in our neighborhoods to deal with this heat is going down. So essentially, you're finding that people are not able to live inside houses. If you are able to sit inside houses without active cooling, without air conditioning and so on, then they're actually falling sick. So we want you to think about the fact that there are literally tens of thousands of people in any place on the street during very hot periods of the year as street workers, as street vendors, as sanitation workers, and so on. Think about how um, people can be allowed to deal with this heat. What can you create, right? If you think about really old towns, they always had these things called Chalivendram in Telugu. They call it Pyao in Hindi. Basically, watering points, right, where free water was available. What would the equivalent of that be in our contemporary cities? So that's the five set of things. What I want to do now is to ask Padma to tell us 4 stories, each of them speaking to one of these broad themes, which is partly going to address this thing that I was telling you earlier about how she's been working over the years to bring stories of what happens in places. So, Padma,
Yeah,
can I ask you to tell us those 4 stories? The way to metro. Maybe I can just prompt you one after the other. So tell us about the way to metro, then we'll go through the remaining stories.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Anant, to brought me here. Sure, I will explain first the way to metro. Way to metro is dealing with the subject. That is, the people surrounding villages are moving from their villages to cities for their work. Especially women work in a apartments as a cleaning and as a cook like that, and her husband working as a what do you call that apartment
Watchman.
Yes, thank you. So I took a family. Her name is Johnsy. His name is Anji. They moved. They have 2 children. One day, because of a lot of drinking habit, he had the Anji, so he died. They're staying in the same apartment complex in a room, small room, last 10 years. Suddenly, apartment people given her 10 days time to vacate the place. She asked each and every flat owner or tenant, because she is staying here last 10 years. She know how to work in an apartment complex. She know how to switch for water motor, and she is cleaning everything. She is open the door at any time when cars are coming. So she don't want to leave that place, because immediately she don't have any place to move from this city. Her one more big concern is about her children education, because she is investing a lot of money on her children education. So she said, middle of the year, if I move from this place to other place, where shall I again see, for my children's school, it's very difficult. Second thing, nearby, this is the no slums nearby, so she can't move from that apartment complex. She is pursuing every day, but all the apartment owners, some are sympathetic on her situation, but no one is giving her chance to survey to. So the apartment as a watchwoman, okay. Then she started moving, looking around many places. One day she came to the apartment. She pack up all of her things. She have everything in that small room, TV and one Godrej Birwa, and she have gas stove, everything she have, with fridge also she have. She said that new watchman, you keep all these big things in the same room. I will take my clothes and books. I will move from this place. They said, how will keep your things? Then she says, suppose if you don't want these things, I will move them. So another apartment watchman, or otherwise I will sell those things, because anyhow you are also arrange all these things. It will take time for you. So meantime, you please keep these things with them. So they agreed to keep those big things in the same room. Then she took 2 kids. She went to the metro station, that pillar, that 4 sides are the walls, one side is the open. She put in a curtain. She keep her things inside. She start eating food on roadside, that dabba box wala idli, food, everything. She says, this metro pillar, this metro space is my house when I will find a proper place. That is Vetu metro story.
So
Anant?
quickly to just summarize what she said, and I'm doing this partly because there's some echo with Padma's audio, and it may not have been very clear to some people. Essentially, the issue is that you have a very large number of people now living in multi-storied apartment complexes, which require watchmen. And the watchmen are often there in these buildings with families, where the man does part of the work of being a sentry at the gate, and the woman does all of the domestic work in many houses. Now, what happens when the man dies and the woman has to find employment and housing, which is no longer available to her in the way in which it was available to the family, right? So the apartment complex basically tells her that, look, you can continue to do the domestic work for us, but you can't live in this house because we cannot allow you to be the watchman. The security work has to be done by a male and you cannot do it. So now she has to find a solution for this problem. And she does it by, in a very interesting way, finding an edge of the metro route system, at the edge of which there is a little bit of open space that nobody seems to be claiming, and occupies it and turns it into a home for herself. So she manages somehow to appropriate a little bit of public space to create some safety and security for herself, and to create a pathway for her children to grow up and get a decent chance at an opportunity in the city. So this is the way to metro's story, right? So think about this as something that prompts you to think about safety and work in the city, safety and homes in the city, and how people actually make things work for themselves in a city that is so hostile at so many levels. Padma, do you want to tell us the story then of the flood?
Yes. The story name is Rain in the Afternoon. This apartment complex is built on they closed the river belt, small river belt. So they close it, they built an apartment. So whenever there is a rain, there is no proper system in the city to go rainwater flowing. So whenever this rain is coming, the apartment complexes drenched in the rain, all the parking areas, almost sometimes it's a first floor level like that. So one day, this one in a flat, a young girl is staying along with her parents. She is asking the municipal people, corporation people continuously to see some repair and something to save their apartment complex in that street. No one is taking any responsibility. Then one day it's a heavy rain. The apartment complex again still full of water. She started demolish the wall as a symbolic thing. That is rain in the afternoon.
Okay, so as you can see, the story here is of a city that has been built on an existing ecological imprint of an agrarian town, right? You have a river, you have open wells, you have fields, you have water bodies of various kinds and so on. And it is on this imprint that we have now built our real estate. Now, as this new real estate takes over, you have houses everywhere, you have buildings everywhere, the soil becomes impermeable and so on. And in a situation like that, it becomes really, really difficult for people to deal with the monsoon. And one of the things that you're constantly encountering in a city like Hyderabad is that the monsoon, instead of being a pleasant time, actually turns into a nightmare for many people. When they see lightning, they feel terrified. When they hear thunderclap, they feel terrified. A lot of people feel horrified at the sight of water. They can't go out. If it rains really badly, you're going to get a lot of sewage and septage and fecal matter inside your house. If your house is in a low-lying area, all these kinds of challenges. So in the middle of all of this, what you see is one family trying to figure out what to do when it begins to rain. And as the tension builds up, you have a young woman who says, the only way I can deal with this is to actually break a wall, because that's the only way in which I can let the water go out and not come inside the house. Now, this is a story that you will hear in so many ways across the city every time it rains. And it's a particular feature of the city where fecal matter, rain, mud is constantly circulating amidst us. And that's an ecological question, right? How do we deal with these kinds of challenges in any given place? There are no large structural solutions. There are no durable solutions. What works this season may not work for the next 5 seasons, but you still have to find some way of making something work. So think about ecological positive change in this way, that you were looking for some way of bringing about some minor positive change that's going to be durable for a few years. That's the ambition with which we can work. And hopefully, many such solutions can actually come together and hold together in our city. Yeah. So that's the second story. Third story, Padma, can you tell us the story of the woman trying to find a safe place for her child?
Yes, and that is Metro Kavala. Before that, I want to tell one more story about whenever there is a rain, they open all the drainage caps. manhole caps. So these manhole, whenever they open the manholes, most of the time people are get accidentally drenched into the manhole. This is the most dangerous part in the city, even in the buses. Wherever we go, a lot of open manhole are there. So I wrote a story about that. Because we are mentioned about the how the city is when it was rain. So that is one more big issue, whether whatever the location, that manholes are the biggest problem in the city. Second, you mentioned about this Metro Kavala. A family came to Hyderabad. They are staying in a basti. She had a little child. She's 2.5 years daughter she have. Whenever she is coming for work, domestic work, she have a problem. Where shall it keep her child? She asked the basti people how to take care of her child. Most of the people are working women there as a domestic help or some other work. So the women staying in the that basti is older women. So most of the young women are objected. You want to employ my mother-in-law or my mother as your servant to looking after your child, like that they are objecting her. So one lady, she's elder lady, old lady, she said, okay, you pay 1,000 rupees per month, I will take care of your child. She paid. One day she came from her domestic work to home. She see that old lady is after taking out of liquor, she is sleeping. 7 years old boy is molesting this young 2.5 years child. She is scared like that. She is horrified. She wants to move from that place to her village. Her husband is not interested to go back to the village because he is working here as a driver. Her earnings are good, but he is investing that money is on cheaties and something, and he is taking lot of liquor. So she said, my child's safety is very important for me other than this income. So she moving from city to her village. In many bastis, the women are coming for work and mothers are facing this kind of problem because they don't have any crutch type of things in the community halls and events. So most of the bastis have community halls, but they don't have any proper arrangements for these little ones. Suppose if anyone think about it, it's a huge help for the working women and even the safety of the child also secured. This is the story, Metro Kavala. Anant? In this story, she is working in an apartment. She has a daughter, small daughter, and little puppy also. They have both the family are working, man and husband. So they keep her child in a crèche and they keep their dog in a dog's place. So this young girl thing, we don't have any facilities in our area in the city. That is the comparison. She always think about that, the safety of a child.
Yeah. Thanks, Padma. That's actually a very interesting story that I hope some of you who read Telugu will read this at some point of time. But basically, the story is about how well cared for are our children, and where are the infrastructures, where are the services, who does what to facilitate the well-being of our children. So essentially, the story revolves around a woman who's trying to live in the city, find work alongside her husband, earn some money and access the labor market. And she finds that the only way she can do that is by finding some kind of a childcare support work around the neighborhood. And when she leaves the child there, she finds that the center itself, the woman who's supposed to be caring for the child herself, is not a particularly reliable person. So where does she go, right? So this is a challenge of not having safe spaces for children, becoming actually a big block for women entering the labor force across the city. So I mean, as you begin to explore, you will find many variations of this. One of the things that I found when I was doing my work in Hyderabad 10 years ago was that when people are moved from the center of the city to another resettlement location, very often mothers are not able to leave their children at home and go for work because it's a new place, nobody can trust anybody else, and there are no recognized trustworthy infrastructures and services in the area. So that's another set of issues that we really struggle with, and we need to find infrastructural and service related solutions for these things. So we really hope that you will be able to think about issues like this when you think about any of these sites. Padma, is there one more story that you want to tell us?
That is public spaces in the night time. That is that one is most of the young girls are working in malls, hospitals, and petrol bunks. In many areas, they're working, even theaters in the night, 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, like that. But they don't have any public transport system, proper public transport system for them to reach their house. Because in other areas, that is in high-tech city, if the people are working in as a computer jobs like that, they have the proper system to drop the people after midnight or something. But these unorganized sector, they have the issues of transport system. I wrote a story about that, how the bus stands also become not safe for the girl to waiting for a bus, how she faces many problems around that. Because everyone knows that after a certain time, if any girl on the bus stop, on the road, people will think differently. They never take it this place also for her like that. So whenever women on outside house at night time, how these girls, unorganized sector girls, reach their areas, because most of them are staying in busties. They are facing one is the transport. Whenever they reach their place, they are facing a lot of problem with the street dogs. This is one more issue in the cities. That is the story.
This is the T junction story, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to quickly actually post the link to this film. It's a short film called T Junction. Some of you may be able to actually recognize the location, and I'm going to just post the link in the chat. You can take it from there and watch it. It's a lovely film at so many different levels. It's a story which is interesting at so many different levels. The basic thing that actually matters as a story in this is the fact that a young woman standing at a street corner late in the night is someone somewhat of an anomaly. Nobody knows what to make of her. So there are people who think that she's a call girl. There are people who think that she's a woman in distress. There are people who think that she's someone who is lost. There are people who think that she needs to be protected. There are people who think that she should be assaulted. All kinds of perceptions of what this body is, right? And the story actually ends in a very interesting way. As all of these people are speculating about the identity of this woman, a couple of young men come from one side and just pick up the woman and walk away. And that's basically because it's actually not even a woman. It's a mannequin that two boys had kept there on the street. They'll go and have their while they go and get their evening snack. So that's the story. I've just posted the link. I'm going to stop here. We have very quickly outlined the different kind of themes, what are the kind of things we are thinking about, and what the competition is about. And I've been speaking for a long time. So I want to stop here and ask Swastik to walk you through the process of this competition a little bit. And then we can open it up for questions.
Thanks, Anant. And Padma ma'am, thank you so much for those wonderful stories. I think one of the things I'd really like to point out very sort of clearly is that the process and exactly what the steps are like very highly detailed out on the website, on the competition website. So you must go through those and much of your answers, there's a FAQ section also, much of your questions will probably get answered over there. So we sort of looking forward to hearing from you, not just in this particular workshop, and we'll actually get to an interesting exercise after this, but also on thoughts in general on how this competition is planned and how it's kind of worked out. Because the most important thing is that eventually, and if you got the sort of threads from the stories that Padma told us, there are finer, more nuanced questions at play here, no? So to that extent, I think it's really important to understand that it's not necessarily some land architecture design kind of intervention that actually makes a difference in people's lives. It's actually sometimes an inversion or almost a subversion of these kinds of values, basically, that actually can make a difference. So I know that a lot of you who have registered are basically architects and planners and from at least from the design field and things like that. But I really hope that you'll be able to find more people who are able to build in more dimensions, more flavors, more nuances into your design ideas. So in terms of logistics, it's fairly simple. I think what is quite clear, we have quite a few registrations, and what will happen is that we have a jury that will go through all the ideas that are submitted. Somebody asked in the chat as well that do I need to submit one sheet or whatever, and you will notice if you see the website a little bit in detail, that you can submit something which is very architectural, design oriented, and so on and so forth. But you can also submit different ways of looking at things. You can submit an idea to make a film about a place. You can submit an idea to write about the place in a particular way. You can submit an idea to reimagine it in a programmatic sort of way. For example, like I just want to sort of say, that a programmatic intervention might involve some kind of a physical intervention, but often a programmatic intervention can happen without anything. For example, one of the people, in fact, this is happening in a lot of cities. It's a very heartening kind of phenomena and thing that we see, is there's a lot of volunteerism. And when I say volunteerism, there are groups of citizens coming together from sort of, sometimes similar walks of life, sometimes different walks of life, but will voluntarily do something in a particular location. So, for example, the cleanup groups that are there in so many locations. Now the question is that you will your thing will be that, oh, if I propose an idea for a cleanup, is that a viable idea? Now here's how you can think about it, which is that this cleaning up is fundamentally the job of a particular government. It's actually supposed to be done by our local government, which is the GHMC, and but then it has its own constraints, issues, and all sorts of wastages that take place, basically. So to that extent, it's not something that it's able to manage at all points of time. And we know it's not. Sometimes it is innocent, and sometimes it is not innocent. The way that infrastructure works out, but the government can only operate at that level. There are volunteer groups basically doing this on their own and saying that this is something that affects us or affects people around us, and we should be doing that. Now, if I was to simply say that, then I'm not sure if I'm able to add value in a different kind of a way, basically, right? Now, if you heard Padma's stories, they're about space, they're about a social, let's say, what I would call broadly a socio-spatial outcome, a change that takes place because of a combination of things. And while cleaning garbage will definitely achieve some of those things, and I think that's a first step that one should be thinking of, but it's probably not adequate to actually convert these spaces back into values that the communities living over there appreciate. So without wanting to sort of confuse you, I just want to say that smaller infrastructural things or larger infrastructural questions, rather, like, garbage or flooding and things like that, are not something that you can answer at a place-based location. So you need to think of your ideas, communicate them in any way whatsoever. Logistically, that's not a problem for us. That's why the jury that is there, including myself, have very, very diverse backgrounds, have worked in different sectors, have taught and practiced in very many sectors, including like Padma has written stories. She's a prolific writer. Her work is made into films. Somebody like Lindsay or me, we are from the built form sort of background, but then we also have a lot of sensitivity to how systems work and how communities operate and things like that. So the jury is going to shortlist ideas first, and honestly, I think it's not necessary that if you position yourself in one particular site or two sites, there's no restriction. You can give ideas for many sites. There's no restriction on that. If you position yourself on one or two sites or wherever and come up with ideas, it may eventually be possible that that idea actually transfers to other sites as well. So it's not necessary that it will only work in one particular place. It could also very well work in other places. So the criteria for assessing that is basically on those lines. What is the how far can this idea travel? Does it have like really a substantive kind of a potential to make a difference in not just over here but also in different locations? Who's the team that's basically putting it together? Have they thought this through? Have they thought this through from different angles? So are there angles of or dimensions of social sciences involved? Are there dimensions of spatial sciences involved? Are there dimensions of some kind of basic planning, management, that kind of a thing? Is that involved? So those are the kinds of things that we'll basically be shortlisting on the basis of. And then thereafter, basically, we will choose 10 very interesting ideas, or rather 10 interesting, teams that have come up with certain ideas. And that will be what will finally get converted. And now we have the experience on how to do that to implementable kind of solutions. And that's basically because an idea requires a certain amount of documentation. When I say documentation, it's if it's a spatial kind of an idea, it requires documentation in the form of drawings or bills of quantities and so on and so forth. Or if it's a programmatic idea, it requires documentation in terms of putting the plan together. Who are the stakeholders involved? What will they contribute? Where will the money come from? All those things that have to be put together to make it into a proposal. And that proposal making will be on one exercise unto itself. And once those proposals are ready, we know we have the ear of the government, including the current government. We know we have the ear of CSR. We know we have a lot of people interested in different ways who want to contribute to it, thanks to the strong sort of presence that HUL has created within communities, civil society organizations, and a lot of stakeholders inside Hyderabad. So that will be the logic of how this works, and it's not necessarily that you will have one idea and it'll get built. It's not that kind of a simple thing. It's basically a iterative process, and it will involve certain number of people. So it is complex, but I think in this complexity we will all have a lot to learn, which is eventually, I think, one of the most important outcomes I'm hoping to get out of this particular exercise. So is that adequate, Anant? Do you want me to detail this out further, or?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Swastik. No. I think for now this is enough. I would strongly encourage all of you to look up the website carefully, go through it several times. If you have questions, please just ask us. You can write to us. You can ask us questions on Instagram. You can ask us. We'll also share our WhatsApp number, and you can send WhatsApp messages to us. We will respond to that. The thing that I'm most excited about when I think about this competition is that it's a collective learning process, and it's a learning process that I think will be very, very useful for our cities. because there are a number of things about which we have just completely stopped thinking many years ago. Things about architectural education, things about how to think about locations and places. We have stopped thinking about how to govern places. We stopped thinking about a lot of things. And I'm really hoping that what this competition will do is to give us a number of talking points. If we have a lot of interesting conversations about what to make of small shrines in our cities, what to make of the edges of playgrounds, what to
Think we lost you, Anant.
నేను అన్మ్యూట్ చేసి
Yeah, you're back. You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just got knocked out for a moment. So that's what it is. We are thinking of this as something that is going to have a lasting impact. It's going to be durable. We are thinking of this as something that is going to slowly build strong, durable communities. We are thinking of the teams that are getting formed here as peer groups that are going to stick together as friends for a long time. So there are a lot of things that we are hoping to get out of this, and we hope that you will all enjoy it. So what we'll do now is to take about 10 minutes to see if any of you have any urgent pressing questions. We will answer them as much as we can, but please keep in mind that there will be questions coming up all the time, and we are here to answer them. No questions immediately?
I think people might need a little bit of time to think through also. So perhaps we can move on. And and there is one question. I'll just take a look at that. But and we can move on and we can come back to the questions. So please feel free to put it in the chat box also.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this question is quite is about the process. So let me just respond to that quickly. What we are imagining is that you will have 4 themes and 10 sites. Now you can stray away from all of this and find your own theme and your own site, but we would strongly urge you to stick with one of the themes and one of the sites, at least one of the themes, one of the sites. And that is basically because it means that there is an ongoing conversation. There is a prepared documentation that is available. What we have done over the last couple of months is to produce extensive documentation of each of these 10 sites, right? So if you have people in your team who are somewhere else, then they will not be at a disadvantage. If you start with a completely new site, which start with a completely new idea, then it will take everybody time to catch up. And given that we are saying that this is something that can go on in many iterations over the coming years, we're not going to ever lose out on anything. But we have to get started somewhere. An extension of the question, do we need to address them all? No, you don't have to address all of them. What we are basically suggesting is that you take one site, one theme, and see what you can make of it. Yeah. And this is basically because, I mean, any of you who has been involved in design work would know, and if you're not involved in design work, involved in policy work, also you will know. If you are involved in basically cooking, also you will know that you got to put constraints on what you're doing, right? You have to have a set of simple constraints, and only then your creativity will actually begin to flourish. There's one question about can we quickly talk about each of the sites and any particular reasons for them to be shortlisted? It'll actually take time to so Swastik has already answered that a little bit, but basically the thing is that in the process of working through our MOU with the government, one of the things that we asked the government to help us with is to identify sites where they thought something interesting could be done. So it was the zonal commissioners in the city who gave us lists of places where they thought something interesting could happen. And there were 100 such sites that came from the municipal corporation itself. What we did is to pick 10 out of those. And the logic was very simple. It has to be a good distribution of different types of things, different possibilities and opportunities, and that it should be something that is manageable as a place. It shouldn't be too complicated legally or politically or in any other way. And that's how we chose the sites. There's one question here. Can HUL help us start off field work in terms of introducing us to the communities, etc., and setting their context to an extent? Yes, to an extent, yes. But connecting with the communities and so on will have to be done by yourselves. You'll have to be there in the site. Yeah, Swastik, go on.
So, like I said, there's two stages to this, and the mentoring part of it is something that we will be very, very actively and directly involved in. But at this stage, because it's a large number of registrations now, introducing people who we know in these areas, some of these places we do know people, etc., would become a bit of a overload for the people over there as well. So we encourage you at this stage, at the idea stage, to go by yourself, have a look. Let us also not be the ones to direct you into a particular community or into a particular group or a particular set of things. Basically, you go independently. At once the ideas seem to be sort of working and they're shortlisted, then I think we can certainly then the connections will be made a little bit more actively. Does that answer your question? Thanks.
Before we visit the relevant sites, do we need to take any permission letter from you? No, you don't need any permission letter from us. These are all public places. Like in all public places, you will find some resistance in some places. You will find a lot of welcoming people in some places. It's something that you'll have to take on as part of being in the city anyways. This can happen to anyone, anywhere. So you can just go there. Did the government give financial support to start business, to start people in that site? Yes and no, in the sense that when we had the MOU with the government at some point of time last year in May, the understanding was that the government will provide financial, will actually put in money and actually execute many of these projects. Now the government has changed. Rules are different. We're discovering challenges in procurement and so on and so forth. But the broad in principle idea that the government will support this kind of things is there, which is the reason why we are saying that depending on the specific ideas that we are working with, we go along. We will see if necessary, we can raise CSR funds, we can raise government support, we can find those things. And our commitment is to see that something interesting is done.
Just to add to that, this idea of taking smaller spaces and converting them to, re-looking at their values is this framework of so-called placemaking, which is kind of got some traction in the larger world, in the global sort of, urban studies world, urban development world, is not at all unfamiliar to Indian audiences, in the sense in Indian government. So it's not just the Telangana government or GHMC that is interested in some of these things, but also at a national level, there are movements on this. The National Institute of Urban Affairs is basically trying out placemaking exercises and things like that. So there are many frameworks within which these ideas can find support and funding. It's not necessarily that the government Telangana itself only can do it, basically.
And there's one question from Dhanyashree just now. Dhanyashree, what would be the extent of design that is expected? Is there any restriction in the amount of built-ups? Actually, Swastik had just answered this a moment ago, where he said that it's possible for you to imagine this as a broad program that requires a very small intervention. It could be the other way around, that you're actually building an infrastructure and then leaving it open. The constraint is the size and the constraint is the cost, right? You're not going to be thinking of this as something which can cost more than 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe at the most 10 lakh rupees. It shouldn't be costlier than that. So it has to be under that kind of a financial limit. That's the one constraint that you'll have to deal with. Okay, so I think we should move on to the second part of the workshop, where we move everybody into breakout sessions. And I'm just going to quickly walk you through what we're going to be doing in the breakout sessions, and then when we come back here. The one thing, as I said right at the outset, what we wanted to do is to give everybody a chance to kind of talk to each other, at least be able to recognize each other's presence and so on. So what we are doing is to quite arbitrarily divide everybody into 4 groups. And the groups are created as and associated with one of the 4 themes: safety, child friendliness, positive ecological change, and living with extreme heat. 4 themes. So each of you will be working under one theme in the group. There's going to be a large number of people because we have, I think, how many? 90 participants in this, of which, even if we remove us, the HUL folks, you're looking at something like 80. So about 20 people in each of the breakout sessions. We're quite pleasantly surprised, but it also means that infrastructurally, we are kind of challenged right now, because how do you work with the 20 people in a breakout room? But what we want you to do is to imagine this as a quick exercise in how to put together a dream team for doing this project. Yeah. What kind of a team do you need? What kind of people do you need to turn a place into a safe place? What kind of a team do you need to turn a place into a child-friendly place? What kind of a team do you need to put together something that is going to be allowing people some kind of comfort in extreme heat conditions? What kind of team do you need to deal with the negative impacts of ecological degradation, right? That's the question. What is the team that you need? Who do you want in the team with you? And there's a structure that we have created so that it'll be a little easier for you. We are going to be working on Google Jamboards on which you can all type in. And once you have all type it all in, you can talk to each other, and then you come back into the larger room after 20 minutes, and then you can share those notes with us, and we can talk a little bit more, and then we can close the workshop for today. But in this, one of the things that I want you to think about is that in each breakout session, you're going to have 2 or 3 questions that you want to answer. That question could be about the experience of safety, where, how, what do you think will be required to make a place safe, etc., etc. And then you start listing out who should be there in the team. Now, when you're thinking about the team, please give yourself the license, the permission to think about that in outside of the known standard professional roles, right? Please do not simply say, we need a medical doctor here, right? You want a particular kind of person who has some understanding of medicine for a particular reason, right? That's all you need. You don't need a medical doctor, right? You can actually end up getting a terrible team member if you just say, I want a doctor. So think about what that might mean. For example, one of the funny stories that a senior IAS officer once told me about how she made sure that girls in Hyderabad, in the slums, were able to go to schools. She did something very simple. She just went into many of these slums where there are these women who have a very loud mouth, can be very abusive, and they are in their middle ages or sometimes even older. And she would catch all of them and say that, look, I'm electing you as the neighborhood custodian who will make sure that nobody will trouble these girls when they go to school. So if anybody, any man in the area says anything abusive or nasty to a girl who's going to school, these women would jump in. And then the kind of abuses that they could hurl at them, the kind of humiliation that they could hurl at them was just unimaginable, right? They would say things that would put any man, especially a man who thought of himself as a very masculine person, to be so completely embarrassed. And he couldn't even beat her up because then everybody would say, you're beating up a woman, right? So they just basically took all of the known stereotypes of a place and embarrassed people out of harassing anyone at all. And it actually worked very well, right? So you want to turn a place into a safe place for girls, you might want to have in your team a lot of women who are capable of hurling abuses. I'm saying that do not restrict your imagination to saying that I want a woman police constable, right? You may get actually a woman constable who's incapable of doing anything about girls' safety. You want particular types of characteristics, abilities, skills, knowledge, etc. So think about that and be bold about it. It's perfectly possible to say that, look, I want someone who can really, really cook good food in the team. Right? It's perfectly possible to say that I want someone who can actually play music. I need someone who understands music to be able to turn this place into a child-friendly place. Right? I want someone who can teach mathematics, or I want someone who can show how to make video films. Think about all of those as possibilities. Yeah. Okay. So Meghna, do you want to take over now?
Yeah, so I'll just start making breakout rooms, and each breakout room will have one facilitator and one moderator who will help you think through the process as well as help you with logistics. In the chat is a Jamboard that Divya has shared. If you can just go to the Jamboard, it will let you edit and take part in the brainstorming on the whiteboard. So I'll just put you in the groups right now. We're just waiting for everybody to join back. It'll just take like a couple of seconds.
Binjal, feel free to complete your point because you got cut off.
We can't hear you. You have to unmute.
This is the scariest of all experiences.
Yeah.
Always
Being
listen.
owned.
Right. So the point I was making was simply that I think the entire community needs to be involved, maybe through the form of a committee that represents the community with equal representation from all kinds of all identities that exist in that particular unit. But right from the planning of the intervention to the execution, I think the entire community needs to be involved, not just people with particular skill sets. That also helps build engagement. It also helps with the sustainability of the intervention in the long run, because people have been involved, people have more skin in the game that way. And I mean, it's also like, I mean, they'll have more ownership. So just that addition, that small one.
I think it ties in very well with what Jonathan was saying about maybe the way to get them involved is the communication and the stories we tell and how we tell them. But thanks for the point.
We are all here now. All the
Yeah.
rooms have closed. Okay, excellent. So we are a little short of time. We are supposed to close at 2, and we'll try our best to close it as soon as possible. Anant, do you want to moderate this just quick round of discussion around what we have written. You can go through all the 4 boards that are there on the link, and we can quickly run through them.
Can someone share the board?
I'll just send it to you on the chat over here as well.
No, not in the chat. Can you share it on the share screen?
Yeah, I'll share it. Can you see my screen?
We
can see
can.
your screen.
Yeah.
Can you kind of increase the zoom or just set it up as a presentation full screen or something like that? Is that possible?
Yeah, just close the tools.
I tried looking for it. I couldn't find it. Maybe we can just
Okay.
zoom in, Meghna,
Yeah, just zoom in as
into the
well.
board.
Yeah.
All right.
F11 for full screen.
That's with the browser ka full screen.
Okay. All right. So I just want to make a couple of preparatory comments. One is that we've actually done this exercise in not very ideal conditions. The not very ideal conditions happen basically because we are actually quite pleasantly surprised by the number of participants, and we were not prepared for having 20 people in one room. And it was almost that, between 15 and 20, where the actual ideal size for a breakout room should be anywhere between 6 and 10, no more than that. So that's one thing that has happened. The second thing is that one of the things that when we are under pressure for time, is that we do not get to make sure that people always everybody and actually has a chance to speak. And this often happens because some people take time to warm up and speak. Some people need to be prompted and asked to speak, and some people are willing to jump in and speak, and it's all perfectly all right to work with all of that. I mean, when I used to teach in large classes, one of the things I always do is to ask people to own up right up front where they belong. Are you a talker? Are you a non-talker, etc.? And then I know what is the geography of my classroom, and then I figure out what to do with each group. Online, it's a little difficult. So it's possible that many people did not get a chance to speak, and they may be very happy that they didn't have to speak. That's also perfectly fine. But I hope that one thing that has happened is that everybody has had a chance to think about the issues that have come up. So let's quickly go through what the each of these boards has done. How do we do this? Do we have one person taking responsibility for each of the rooms and quickly tell us what you thought about? Who wants to do this for breakout room number 1? What makes us feel safe in a place? One volunteer, please. Even the moderator. Who is the moderator for this group?
Yeah, that was me.
Can you just go ahead and tell us what's
Okay.
happening in this room?
Yeah. So we started off with the questions of like which kind of places are unsafe and what makes a place unsafe. So we started with the lack of street lights, lack of lighting, lack of pavements and sidewalks for pedestrians to walk, the lack of different types of people that only if there are if there's a woman walking and if there are only men who are there, that would make a woman feel unsafe, versus how the presence of different age groups of different genders would make the feel more safe, make the place feel more safe. So those are the kinds of things that came up when we first started talking about places which are unsafe. And then moving on to for whom are we imagining places for to be safe. Within that, we discussed about, some of these sort of directly relate to pedestrians, like having sidewalks, having walkability, to pedestrians, to elderly senior citizens, for and then for children and women in the trans community. The presence of somebody who does not look like a cisgendered person and who looks different than what so the questions of safety for them would be very different. So these are the things that came up when we were talking about the question of who.
It's very interesting, no? I mean, every time I look at the safety question, one thing that I'm always struck by is that for whom question, one group that is always missing is the people who work in places. Your sanitation workers, your sex workers, your street vendors. What about safety for them? Are their safety concerns different from the safety concerns of other people? Right? And that's a question that has to be deliberately brought into the conversation. Otherwise, it actually doesn't even come up very often. So I'm just pointing this out, not to say that there's a shortcoming in this discussion. I'm saying this to point out that when we have conversations like this, we should often try and prompt ourselves to ask, what is it that is not being represented here? One way to think about it is that who.
I think we lost.
Yeah. Okay, so should I just go ahead, but till the time he comes back?
I just want to say one thing. This thing about.
I'm back.
Okay.
No, I was
I was just saying this. Go on.
No, this thing about manholes and hanging electrical wires and the streets just being like there being no footpaths and like narrow roads and all that it's a very interesting one, because it's not just about like physical safety, but if you're trying to maneuver a road and you have all of these things happening around you, you're unable to pay attention to other things that might be unsafe to you, especially. So your attention is essentially divided between things, and so I think that's one thing that I can think about. And
sensory overload is an issue, actually.
Yeah, sensory overload.
Yeah.
So I think if
I mean,
the
last thing I was saying when I got kicked out was to say that who is not in the room, and I was quickly outside the room and I was saying it. But I think it's one way to do this is that we actually list out for ourselves questions that we need to ask, and one question that we should always ask is who's not in the room, because then the burden of speaking for them and burden of speaking for them in an appropriate way, not misrepresent them, falls on those of us who are in the room. And that's something that we need to take very seriously. Okay. All right. So great. Do you want to
yeah, I think I'll just quickly wrap up
look
with
at who
the Dream Action Team. Yeah. So we started off with the idea that involving community members, especially if we're talking about women and children, would be crucial. From there on, people who would actually be doing a lot of work, would be involved in doing the work. That is, it could be GHNC workers, it could be like masons if we're doing like a infrastructure related project. So involving those people, and then the people who have good communication skills, people who can be active, who can be on the field, who are able to interact with people at the site, and have local language knowledge. So that was something that came up, and the idea of having somebody with a sociology background, in the sense that somebody who has familiarity with understanding people's behaviors, especially with respect to how they interact with their built environment, as well as somebody who has an understanding of how various marginalities intersect and how that creates a particular kind of vulnerability for somebody who requires safety. So I think and urban planners who would be able to sort of imagine some of the implementation of the project. So I think overall these are the things that came up when we were thinking of a dream team. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my quick response to this is that, and I'll just share with you how I think about these kinds of lists. For me, it's almost like reflects that I think about this in terms of a matrix of power and interest. Who are the people who are capable of acting? Who are the people who are going to be affected? Yeah. So I would think that to make a place safe, power.
You're muted, Anant.
Yeah, the host muted me. I didn't do it to myself. So I was just saying that who has the power to act, and the host muted me immediately. So I think it's really important to think about who in a group of people has the power to act in what ways, and where can that power go, right? And without that understanding, you can't put together a strong action team. If you want to put together an action team, then you want people with very different kinds of skills. You definitely need people who can provide understanding, people who can challenge you, but people also who can execute things, people who can mobilize resources, right? So what kind of resources do you need, and who should you put into your team for making that resource mobilization possible? Do you need a politician to take decisions? Those are things that will be useful to think through. Let's move to the next group. Child friendly. Who wants to explain this?
I think Nivedita.
Nivedita, yeah. Go ahead, Nivedita.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we started our discussion with thinking about what children like to do, and therein we thought about movement at first, because because children like to explore their surroundings and understand how different things function, and then we also spoke about engaging children, and and so we began deliberating what an action team would look like. And at first, some of the ideas were about people who would serve as entertainers, like storytellers. But then we began thinking, and could you zoom out? Yeah. So we began thinking about how, and Sir told us that it would be better to think in terms of people uh, who could facilitate the storytellers and the animals, rather than thinking in terms of the storytellers and animals in themselves. And then so so there was a suggestion about including parents, since they would be well versed in what children need, as well as architects, landscape designers, and as well as counselors. And some of the, as you can see on the screen, some of the spaces in which children are able to do these to freely move around and engage are parks, zoos, libraries. But then also, we were thinking in terms of temporary spaces, since often the government is hesitant to allow permanent infrastructure building. So, can we imagine places like pitches and places where children can engage without for months, for some years, without creating permanent infrastructure, because then in that case it would be a swifter movement. Like we can more swiftly facilitate such spaces and allow access to them. So yeah.
Yeah. So this is really lovely. You know, the one thing that I actually feel very happy about is that the idea that animals, dogs, puppies can actually be part of a team. Kittens, swastik. Sorry, I forgot that. Um, but since I was in the room and I was part of the conversation, I actually want to hear what Swastik or Divya or any of you want to have any thoughts on what's going on here.
No, this is good. I mean, I think also in the interest of time, we should probably move on. But this is like fairly comprehensive, very interesting looking mix. Now, my only question at a very broad level, and it's not that we have to answer it, but it's just sharing a thought, really speaking, a thinking tool, essentially, is this idea of child friendliness and the distance of each stakeholder from that particular line. The idea that there's something which is child friendly or needs to be child friendly, and that concept and the distance of each of these stakeholders from that line is a way to think about what is the work required, let's say, what is the feasibility, what is the effort required to actually pull them to into a particular frame. So just in terms of when you think of a team, it's useful to think about, this is the purpose of the team. I want some social special outcome which is to do with child friendliness. That's what I want to get out of it. Now, when I put together a team, how far are these people from these things becomes the question of effort and the amount of time required to develop some consensus, build some plans and things like that. So I hope you understand what I'm saying, that it's basically when you're thinking of a dream team, especially, you need to know that while a person or a stakeholder or a particular potential team member may be very far away, but the result of getting them close to your idea and your things, basically, your sort of, imperative of child friendliness may be very, very high. But somebody may be very close by and would require less effort to actually bring into the team. So that's one way to just think about it.
Perfect. So let's move to the next group. How can people cope with rising urban heat? Who wants to jump in this group?
One of the group members would like to just quickly run us through this.
Yeah.
It'll be nice if one of you do it.
Yeah, can I?
Sure, please go ahead.
Please.
So basically, we have started with the people who will be getting affected by the urban heat, rise in the urban heat. So we have a different occupations who will be getting affected, and some of them were the low-income households, auto drivers, and there are the street vendors, local street dogs, because it's their home. Street will be their home, and we have discussed how it will be getting affected to them. Major will be the health issues. And next we have come to the dream actions, how it will be looking dream action team. So there were many responses, and it was some of the discussions went on the residential welfare association of that area, because it depends on the locals how they are getting affected through the heat island. And the other, different responses were like mostly going through the local construction techniques and going through the local materials so that it decreases the urban heat. And if we do this thing, how should it get spread towards the people? That's the thing we have discussed. Yeah,
Great.
that's it.
Any thoughts on this, Divya?
I think I was in the meeting, but I
Good.
just wanted to point out how dogs came up in 3 of the themes.
Yeah. Yeah. Kittens got downvoted.
Kittens don't care.
Kittens don't care. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out one thing over here. One of the things about heat, and it's kind of alluded to in this dream team thing that you have here. I was also part of this group towards the second half, and it was, I didn't really pay so much attention. But one thing that one needs to think about when you're talking about heat is actually technology. And technology plays a very big role. And when I say technology, I don't mean technology of fancy technology nature, basically, in the sense of, let's say, you build a new green building, and that's supposed to not just be cool inside and all of that, but also mitigate, carbon effects in the city and so on and so forth. There are all those high level technologies, people are making net zero buildings or district cooling systems. And there are many, many high end technologies, large infrastructure technologies in terms of cooling that are there. But I'm not talking exactly about that. Those are things to think about. But the technology I'm talking about is like the day-to-day cooling technologies, which all of us employ. All of us use those technologies, and everybody is dependent in Hyderabad on those technologies. And those technologies are not standalone, because if I buy a cooler, it comes from a particular shop and a manufacturing industry. It gets financed in a particular sort of way, and it gets repaired and reused and given to my uncle and aunt and or my nephew, or I leave it to as part of my inheritance, and so on and so forth. So these technologies which are very day to day, such as cooling their roof in some way, or putting a cooler, or trying to enhance the ventilation in your small house and things like that, increasing the shading. There are all sorts of these smaller, lower end. When I say lower end, I mean more localized kind of technology that have been using. I mean, you don't find desert coolers in Kerala, where the humidity simply doesn't allow for it. Even in Hyderabad, there are only certain few months of the year where a desert cooler would actually work. But in Rajasthan, a desert cooler would be useful almost for 6 months, or maybe at least 4 months in a year. So localized technologies seem to be a very interesting way of looking at it, and the desert cooler has been expanded on in many different ways. So just technologies and technology ecosystems rather, the whole finance, manufacturing, production, utilization, repair, all of that is something that one should, I think, consider when we're talking about heat, is one thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, perfect. Let's move to the next group. How can we see positive change in our urban ecologies? Does anyone want to explain what happened here?
Someone from the group? Someone from the group, please.
Subra?
Yeah.
I was looking at somebody from the group itself,
Yeah.
not one
Yeah.
of the facilitators.
Maybe should I start taking names?
Yeah.
Maybe Nawaz,
Please.
Jonathan, or Binjal. Maybe because Binjal has already had her share. Jonathan or Nawaz, if you could, either one of you could join in. You had some really interesting thoughts.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Can I initially, when we began with the discussion, we were just thinking what are the features which we can rope in when we see through the perspective of ecology in a city. And then people came up with interesting thing like few came up with the ecology where some temple ponds, if you wanted to bring in the animals, tree covers, and I mean whatever. But I mean, with various kinds of interesting things, also with animals and all, like birds, pigeons, and all. Specifically coming to the Hyderabad, where it's where we see a lot of pigeons, which people usually say that networking usually hurts pigeons and all, but we see pigeons a lot in Hyderabad, and also with all this. Later on, we came up. How do we interact with the daily lives? Then people came up with how do we preserve all these things, and building up various kind of recreation spaces, and also with other interesting notations, and each one gave their insights from their own perspectives and also from their own fields. With local gardeners, some came up with, and nurseries building up herbs nurseries, attaching with the cultural, and also with culture was also I mean, like I wrote there, preserving the wetlands and tying them with the cultural spaces. It was like it would tie up the communities with the space, and so the space can be preserved as well as the community can be served through the I mean, community can also be served through that, and all the space can be preserved, and output would be the ecology on a whole can be preserved on a whole. And also finally, when we wanted to see who to be dream team, who can be roped in and all, I mean people come up with various, like they need some expert from their communities, like GIS, ecology experts, and also one of the teammate came up saying that there should be team should consist right from the beginning of persons. Community should be involved from the planning to the, I mean, in all the aspects. Community should be the primary stakeholder because they are involved at various stages and they are going to live it with that. So it should be at the forefront of any kind of team which we are going to put forward. That
Yes, maybe the last good point that I also found very interesting was this one about local carpenters, tile makers, brick makers, or anyone who is using natural materials who will be able to tell us more about the local ecology instead of importing materials from other places for things like local crafts or creating at a very local level. So what to do with local materials? We think that creative aspect also links to ecology and could be a very big stakeholder.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nawaz.
Right. So we have a fairly interesting set of ideas in all of the groups. The goal of this exercise was not to do something exhaustive and comprehensive. We were only trying to see if we can get people to talk to each other. And that's where I think we have failed completely, which is basically because we'd assumed that there would be 5 or 6 people in each group, and we ended up with 15 to 20 people. But Divya and the rest of the team actually has a fairly strong plan for creating opportunities for people to talk to each other, even without us being there. So Divya, what's the plan? Do you want to roll it out now? Do you want to send information to people? How do you want to do this?
Thanks. So we are planning to set up a Teams group. We're in the process of adding all your email IDs. So anybody who's registered, including your team members, we're going to add everybody to one group where you have a discussion space where you can introduce yourselves, what ideas you're interested to work on, what background you come from, and what you're looking for in a teammate. And you can start talking to each other, maybe forming teams, discussing if your ideas are matching, if your interests are matching. If you need support in Hyderabad for people to go look at the sites, mention that so people from Hyderabad can jump in and say that yes, we'll want to work with you and do the field work with you. We'll just take a couple of days to set this up. You'll all get emails. Then you'll have to log into Teams, and then you'll have access to this space, which will stay open till the end of the competition, maybe a little bit beyond that as well.
Right. So at the end of this, it's for 2:21. We're already 20 minutes past our scheduled time. So if there are any quick, immediate thoughts, questions, please jump in now. Otherwise, we should close now and then.
Sorry, can I also ask if we can do a quick group picture?
Yeah, we should. Binjal is just asking, can we consider creating a WhatsApp group? Is that a useful thing? I mean, can you have actually 500, 300 people in a WhatsApp group?
I think we'll create the team space, Vinjal, and then if you form a team within that, you're happy. Like, we're happy if you guys go ahead and work within a WhatsApp group. But with so many people, it's a lot of registrants and people are still registering. So we'd want to keep it to teams, but we're happy if you use WhatsApp.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we do need some moderation ability.
Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts? If nothing right now, so can we ask all of you to turn on your video cameras so that we can see all of your beautiful faces for 1 second when Funistry is going to take pictures. This is amazing. How are you even going to get all of us in?
We have 2 screens, so I'm just gonna do like screen 1 first and then like screen 2.
Okay.
Okay, so just 1 more second. I think people are still turning on cameras.
Yeah. Can everybody turn on your cameras?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take a picture of the first screen. Maybe smile. Okay, now I'm gonna go on to the second screen. Everybody smile. Okay, I've got 2 screen captures of both screens.
Perfect. Chalo, thank you very much. Please stay with us. It's going to be fun.
I'm sorry. A very quick reminder that in 1 week from now, exactly, we have the second workshop also coming up, which will focus a little bit more on design build form, and for people who are sort of less familiar with the idea of design build form and technology of those kind of things, it would be really important for you to attend. But if you're confident that you know everything about architecture and planning and design, then you don't need to attend.
No, still join though.
But for this
I'm
workshop,
joking, of
second
course.
workshop also, you have to sign up separately.
No, we'll get in touch. I think we will avoid a second registration if it is possible, basically.
Yeah, we'll send out emails for the second workshop as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Padma.
And one last thing, a lot of your team members, but an important thing, a lot of your team members could not join because we made a bit of a mistake, and I'm really sorry for that, because we had a limit to the number of people that could join this call. So we'll make sure that that doesn't happen in the next workshop or going ahead. We really didn't expect this kind of participation, to be honest. That's the fundamental reason.
No, and also a lot of people signed up in the last minute. So when I last checked in the morning, it was 80. And I think that the number of people who signed up just suddenly shot up in the last 2-3 hours. And that's where yeah. So that's where we actually underestimated what was going to happen.
All right.
We'll make the recording available for everybody who's registered, so you can share it with your team members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also the Jam board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Padma. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Padma. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.